Brady, welcome back. You have a big week coming up.
That's right. Big week for Bonzo Finance. We have our TGE event coming up this week. All the pieces are in place for that. We're really excited about this milestone. It's sort of the first step in Bonzo Finance Protocol's journey with regards to decentralization and governance. What this is the distribution of governance tokens for the Bonzo protocol into the hands of community users, participants, folks that are going to be helping in the long term contribute to the development and steering the direction of the Bonzo Finance protocol. So we're really excited about that.
Well, up until this point, you've just been giving out points for lending and borrowing. And of course, you have your NFTs, which have been kind of goosing some of those numbers as well. So it's going to be good to see that token generation event. If anybody that doesn't know TGE, it's some of the lingo we have in the space, token generation event. But Brady, I want to jump into some of the metrics you have here, see what's going on in the Hedera DeFi space.
Yeah, let's do it. So this is the update for February 16th. I think the last one that we did was February 2nd or 3rd. TVL is at 239.37 million. We are seeing a bit of a drop right now. I think part of it has to do with just the overall market price fluctuations. This is in US dollars. And so as the price of HBAR fluctuates, you start to see a bit of a drop on that front. The whole market, I think, is sort of crawling and trying to figure out what's next. And it seems like from sentiment on Twitter that I'm gathering, you've got one camp of people who think that we're still at the early stages or the midst of the bull market, and then other people who are thinking that, hey, this is ran its course and we're actually at the tail end of it. It's so hard to predict where we are in it, and not every market cycle is the same. But I do, personally, obviously hope that we're still at the early stages and there's more to come.
Well, one thing, there is the 4-year cycle that we talk about a fair amount, but there's also the liquidity cycle. We hear Raoul Pal talk about that he believes that it's actually part of that liquidity cycle. And we really haven't seen, the upswing in liquidity. The interest rates remain relatively high, at least over the past decade and a half or so. So if we do start to see liquidity flow back into the market, we could see, benefits from that. And I also lean against the fact that we haven't even seen the impact of going from a hostile environment to a really positive environment as far as the regulatory space. It looks like we're going to get legislation and everything else. So I think we're in pretty good shape. But like you said, we simply don't know.
Yeah, very excited about those changes. And it sounds like, from what I've gathered, we're going to at least get some legislation for stablecoins as like a quick win pretty immediately, which is pretty awesome. I do hope that comes true, and that lays a solid foundation for this future legislation that's going to help onshore these other projects and assets and other things across the industry. So hope to see that also. Jumping into monthly DEX volume. So this previous month, so month of January, we're sitting at about 427.6 million in DEX volume. It does look like these numbers for, again, within this cycle have stayed risen. We obviously had a really amazing month in December, reaching our highs just above 600 million in volume. January, a little bit less. And then February, it looks like we're on track to hit about the same as January. So, hopefully we see that continue, and the next update we'll have more info that's reflective of solid trading volume on the network. Next up is stablecoins. So stablecoin total value locked, the, again, native stablecoin, it's really been pushed on Hedera is native Hedera USDC, and that's sitting at 5.87 million. Something that I did notice in looking at SaucerSwap and even on Bonzo Finance, which are sort of the two largest aggregators of TVL for stablecoin liquidity, is we saw a pretty significant drop on both fronts. And not exactly sure what's driving that drop. The one thing that I can speculate, at least with regards to SaucerSwap, is anytime there's volatility, there's the chance of impermanent loss when you're supplying tokens into these liquidity pools. And so with HBAR price changing, it could be that, because HBAR is paired with USDC as one of the largest liquidity pools, folks withdrawing USDC as part of that. So yeah, not fully certain in terms of what's happening. There's a few different things that we can speculate on, but really want to see USDC liquidity, particularly as TVL, increase. As liquidity starts to get lower, especially for an asset like USDC, where it has a peg to a dollar, it starts becoming more, potentially easily not manipulated, but that peg starts to come under pressure if the market becomes very volatile. And so really hope to see this increase, but right now we're definitely on a drop trend.
Well, that's another positive thing for the Hedera ecosystem is I think as Charles rebrands from the HBAR Foundation to the Hedera Foundation, he's going to want some of those early wins. So I think he's going to kind of supercharge the HBAR economy, and we could see improvements just across the entire space.
I think so too, yeah. And I have a couple of points to touch on later with regards to that rebranding and some of the messaging that they've done recently with regards to HBAR Foundation. I am very excited about that. Overall, stablecoin liquidity has stayed, relatively stable. Aside from that large spike and drop that we talked about in the last DeFi Corner episode, we're still sitting with between 30 to 40 million in USDC in circulation on Hedera and in the Hedera economy. So that's good. Again, I think, and we've touched on this, I think the last few episodes is the emphasis and excitement around bridging, and in particular, Axelar coming online, which is projected for March. No promises on that. That's just sort of the estimated date. But with bridging coming online, it does open the door to be able to bridge USDC from any other network supported by Axelar into Hedera. And then as part of that mechanism, users ending up with Hedera native USDC in their wallet. There's incentives in place to help support driving that liquidity over. My hope is that it also obviously brings in net new users, and it's not just Hedera ecosystem folks that are bridging it, but obviously that's a great outcome as well. But bring your USDC over and then stay in the Hedera ecosystem and play around in DeFi, explore projects. I really hope that ends up becoming a thing. And I really think this is like our potential big moment with regards to really boosting some of these key metrics that we care about.
Brady, just to go into that, the mechanism in which you get native USDC, native Hedera USDC, so you're bringing it over, it's bridged from another platform. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how that works, that you end up with native USDC, and that's going to benefit our liquidity here.
Totally. So with this bridging mechanism, the way that it's working on other networks and should work similarly on Hedera is that you have a native USDC asset, let's say on Polygon, and you want to bridge it over to Arbitrum. And both of those networks have their own native USDC. The way the bridging mechanism works in that case, based on my understanding, is that native USDC on Polygon would get swapped for Axelar's USDC, which is essentially like a cross-chain asset, like similar to how like XRP can be used for cross-border, whereby you convert a currency to XRP gets sent over, and then the XRP gets converted back to whatever the native currency is that you're trying to convert it to. Axel USDC acts as this intermediary asset. And then on the Arbitrum side in this scenario, the Axelar USDC automatically gets swapped in a primary DEX for Arbitrum for native Arbitrum USDC. So in Hedera's case, swap out Arbitrum for Hedera in this example, and that would be a sort of similar scenario. And that does require that there be a pool that exists on the Hedera side of Axel USD and Hedera native USDC. And so there's a bunch of different pieces that are coming into play as part of this, but it's my understanding is it's widely acknowledged what those pieces need to be in place, and that there's enough liquidity on both sides, and that all of that is set up to be able to do this.
Understood. As long as we can get those on and off ramps for USDC as well, I think we'll be in pretty good shape.
Totally. Yeah, and there's a few partners I think that are coming online with regards to that. So yeah, I hope to see more on-off ramps and reduced fees too. I think that's a big limiting factor right now with on and off ramps is pretty massive fees to onboard. So hopefully that's resolved as well. Staking, so liquid staking and native staking. through Stater Labs with HBAR X. The liquid staking APY is sitting at 5.61%. It's down by about 0.1% from the last DeFi corner that we had. So that's holding pretty strong. And then native staking APY 0.075%. So haven't seen any changes on that. But, like we've been talking about, hopefully we see that as another potential quick win with regards to HBAR Foundation and the new strategy. But all speculation at this point. We'll see.
Understood. What do you have for news for us this week?
Yeah, so in news, again, Bonzo Finance is having its token generation event this week. No specific data solidified. Again, sort of the way that we've been approaching things from a development and milestone perspective is trying to ensure the safety, robustness, security, etc., of anything that gets contributed and deployed with regards to Bonzo Finance. So assuming all of that is set up exactly how we desire it at the quality that we want to see it at, we'll be solidifying a date later this week. And what this opens the door to is Bonzo claims. So if you're a holder of the NFT, you'll be able to claim up to 75% of the tokens that are attributed to that as again, a gift to the community for being part of the community and wanting to have this sort of widespread distribution of the governance token. And once the DAO is enacted, allowing everybody who's part of this ecosystem to be able to contribute to steering the direction of the protocol in a decentralized way. In addition, there's preseason points. If you remember back in September, as we were getting the project ready to go live on mainnet, we ran a program for about a week where we did token-weighted airdrops of points in Bonzo. And that was based on all of the assets that are supported by the protocol, so token-weighted for each one of them. And it was a while back. And so just a reminder for anybody who was holding any of the supported assets in Bonzo Finance back in September, definitely go and check the Bonzo application and specifically the points preseason, and put in your account ID, see if you have any points. And if you do, then you'll be able to come to the claims dashboard at TGE, and you'll be able to earn some Bonzo tokens, governance tokens, as part of that process.
Well, I did look at it the other day, and I had like 130,000 points, so I have a pretty good chunk there. And then I also had the NFT, so I'm looking forward to your TGE.
There you go. Very cool. Awesome. Next up is SaucerSwap. They made an announcement recently that they've made $3 billion in total trade volume, which is awesome to see. SaucerSwap is, definitely we're seeing the leading DEX on Hedera based on usage and TVL, and super proud of all the work that they've been doing. And they just keep cranking with new features and functionalities. What also is interesting, between 1 billion to 2 billion to 3 billion, that time is accelerated each time. So not only have they, hit 3 billion, but they've also done so faster than they hit the previous billion in trading volume. So big props to them. Next up is HederaCon speakers. So, I've been following on X, watching all of the announcements of the various speakers and presentations and things that are going to be at this HederaCon event that's taking place on February 25th in the middle of ETH Denver. And one of the more recent announcements in terms of speakers is Charles Hoskinson from Cardano talking with Lehman Baird, with King Solomon as the moderator from Genfinity. Really interesting and exciting to see these two sort of, get up there and talk. And I hope, a lot of times some of the best panel type presentations are ones where there is a little bit of confrontation or back and forth. And so I do hope that it's more of a debate style in a sense, but we'll see how that goes. I think that would be really cool.
One of the things that I'm looking forward to is, not to mention all these HBARbarians getting together, but being able to have those conversations one-on-one with people from the HBAR Foundation, from Hashgraph, from the Hashgraph Association, and so forth. One of the things that Charles mentioned the last time I interviewed him is they want to work with startups in our space on getting funding, not necessarily from the HBAR Foundation, but through VC. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping to see there. And I think in years to come, that'll be even more important because we want to bring capital from outside in as well. And I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks. There's no lack of talent in our space, motivation, passion, all that kind of stuff, great products. We just need to get the capital to be able to give these things the shot that they deserve. And I think that this year and in years to come, HederaCon is going to be really important for that.
Totally agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to see at future HederaCons, and I hope this continues to be a thing every year, but having like a capital allocators track, a VC track would be pretty awesome to see, and agreed with you fully that it's definitely something that's been lacking, and there hasn't been a strong emphasis on that aspect of the ecosystem, but it's one that, you see compounding returns in other ecosystems that do have that, like Solana and Arbitrum and these other networks. And so one piece of the puzzle for sure that is going to help support all of these other initiatives. So agreed.
Yeah, so I covered the hackathon winners the other day as well, and I see that you're highlighting one of them. I didn't dig into this one all that much, but it seems like you have some more details for us.
So I was a judge actually for the Hedera hackathon that just concluded, and was helping judge for the DeFi track. And this company and project came up, so had the opportunity to be able to dig into what it is that they're building. ARZE Payroll is the name of this company, and they were a second place winner in the Hedera hackathon, again for this DeFi track. They're offering a crypto business service and services that support projects within the Hedera ecosystem in terms of their payroll. And they're at least starting with payroll as a problem that does really need to be solved for our ecosystem, whereby today projects, they obviously have to pay consultants, contractors, employees, and it's very manual process right now. So, going into Hashpack or wherever you or Kabila or wherever you use to send your HBAR or USDC, and you send it out to accounts of these individuals that are helping contribute to your project. Very manual. It works, but it consumes time and resources and other things that prevent you from really focusing on building just an amazing product, an amazing ecosystem, an amazing application. And so whenever you have tools that come into play that help founders and leadership at these projects do things more efficiently and do things sort of above board, it supports the entirety of the ecosystem. And I thought it's really cool to highlight this tool because it is something that is definitely currently a gap, and we need more tools that help with administrative type activities for projects in the ecosystem. So again, starting with payroll, but there's a whole bunch of other gaps that exist for things like this, like token management solutions, for example. So you look at like Liquify and Magna. Unfortunately, those don't support the Hedera network, but we need a token management solution for token-based projects that isn't like a Toko white glove high-end version of token management. We need one that's built for native Web3 projects, and it's approachable and affordable. And so hope to see more of this. And then finally, the HBAR Foundation, revamping of the strategy, rebranding, new leadership, all of this stuff that is coming this year. Just want to highlight, based on a recent post that they've done, they have a new token grant that's been provided to their organization from Hedera, which is pretty substantial. And they've sort of updated their mission and their vision for where their focus is and what it is that they're doing to support the ecosystem. And this is all really around things like investment or support for developers in the ecosystem, things that help support community-focused marketing, increasing the users on the network, probably through things like incentives programs, transparent and expedited grant processes. So, if you sort of worked with HBAR Foundation previously, it's a very rigorous process, which I think is helpful because you want to make sure that you're funding the right projects and that you're doing certain levels of due diligence. But an expedited version of that is definitely something that's needed, that we can get things built faster, people funded faster, events and educational initiatives, and on-chain tooling. So they have a really, I think, strong and well-articulated vision of what the next phase is for HBAR Foundation, which I think should be soon Hedera Foundation. That's at least sort of how it's been positioned, that's going to switch over pretty soon too. So I'm excited about this new focus. I'm excited about new leadership there, and just seeing some of these things come to fruition.
Yeah, no question about that. Now, Brady, I do want to get into some DeFi strategies that you might be looking at, things that people can do in the DeFi space, some interesting things that have happened over the past couple of weeks. One of them was that people are using borrowing on Bonzo to get tokens to be able to govern different platforms. I thought that was an interesting development. That's not necessarily a financial thing, but helping to steer different things that we have in our space. And of course, a lot of these tokens out there are for governance. So that was interesting to see. The other thing is I think people really need to keep an eye on what the APRs are in these different liquidity pools and so forth. One of the things that I was taking a look at is Karate. That pool has, I think, an APY right now upwards of like 55%. So you're starting to get into the range where you can earn as much doing that as you might be able to do in up-only gaming. So same thing happens, across the board. You want to keep an eye on things because you might be getting benefits elsewhere and think that's the best way to go. But as things develop in the DeFi ecosystem and things change on SaucerSwap, depending on how liquidity works and how much volume there is, there might be other things to look at. Is there any strategies that you're considering right now or keeping an eye on that the audience might be interested in?
Yeah, no doubt. So I think, if you're a DeFi ecosystem participant, depending on your level of expertise, interests, borderline obsession with DeFi, it's an active activity, in the sense that if you're going to do it well, the folks that I've seen do it well are constantly monitoring the entirety of the landscape and looking for different strategies that allow you to optimize for, obviously, an end goal of profit. And if you're going to do that effectively, I think you have to be looking at, like you said, these APYs that exist on many different platforms within an ecosystem. In putting some of these pieces together, you look at Bonzo and you say, well, I can borrow certain assets for X APY. But when I borrow that asset, maybe there's an opportunity where I can use it in another protocol or another platform and actually earn far more than what I'm paying to borrow it for. And then that delta ends up becoming, potential profit for you. There's a lot of things to factor in with that, such as price fluctuations and a number of other stuff. But, ultimately, taking like a proactive and active approach and monitoring all that is really important, not just in terms of being able to find opportunities, but also to prevent your sort of downside risk when you're looking at these things. APY rates are almost always variable. And so things change very quickly. And so it's important to just stay on top of that if you are going to be participating in that, just given the amount of risk that's involved with it. One of the things that we're seeing folks do, and not any sort of financial advice, but things like borrowing the Sauce token and staking Sauce for XSauce. The last API that I saw for XSauce in their platform was around 12.5%, and borrowing Sauce is around 5%. And so, what we're observing and watching the capital flow across the ecosystem is that's one of the strategies that folks are doing. So like staking, I think borrowing and staking tends to be a common one, or borrowing and supplying into liquidity pools in SaucerSwap as well as another one too, and just banking on rewards for that activity. Again, there's things like impermanent loss if you do something like that you have to be careful and observant of. One thing I'd love to see as part of that is a more robust across the board notification type system. If someone's actively building in the ecosystem and looking for a problem to solve, One of them would be a notification system whereby at certain thresholds, you're notified through text message or Slack or Discord or whatever, like, hey, by the way, this threshold was hit that you had set up previously. You may want to go look at your position in XYZ protocol and make some updates. And so would love to see that come online, because I think that just helps not only people be more optimized in what they're doing, but also help mitigate risk. And then you also mentioned with regards to governance, it's actually, I would almost argue that borrowing tokens for governance related activities has a potential to be a negative. So, if you're able to borrow large amounts of capital and use that for governance decision making, you have a greater ability to sway decisions in governance of protocols. And this is something that we've talked with SaucerSwap, for example, about, where it's like, hey, at what point does this actually start to become a negative? And what are some things that can be done to mitigate? Obviously, raising the thresholds for a vote to pass in terms of how much power you need to pass it is one way of doing that. Still sort of working through what that looks like and how this plays out. But the positive side of this is it's a good problem to have, in the sense that we have more flexibility now in the ecosystem with some of these new protocols coming online. And it just shows that we're progressing. It's a good problem to have, because that means that we're doing some things right.
Well, one of the things, the way I think about it, is both sides, whether it's for a change of a protocol or against, both sides have that opportunity, and whoever has the most capital to borrow, they're going to be able to, influence it more one way or the other. And usually that capital is either going to be USDC, which is certainly a good thing, or holding HBAR, which is certainly a good thing. So, and it's just activity on the network as well, right? So we want to see that activity, people gaining, and things along those lines. The other thing that I wanted to say, we're getting towards tax time. We certainly want everybody to track all of these things. It can be difficult to do. I've been going through it. I look at it as a puzzle. At the end of the year, I go and check all my accounts and see what's been done. But it's another thing to keep an eye on the entire way, because even though you are getting gains in these tokens, you do have to pay taxes depending on what your jurisdiction is. I didn't want to be a downer here at the end, but I'm going through all that mess right now. So I just want people to consider it and make sure they don't get themselves into trouble. But Brady, you had another interesting thing. You know how passionate I got about token weighted airdrops before, specifically HBAR weighted airdrops in the past, but we're starting to see some stuff around that. I wanted you to kind of highlight what you saw around the Candy airdrop.
Yeah, you were spot on. I think this was months ago that you mentioned, with borrowing, the capability to participate in these token weighted airdrops that take place across the ecosystem that are pretty common. There's a group, I think this was Candy Machine, that was doing a token weighted airdrop that included Pack and Steam. And we had a member of our community actually ask this question on our spaces this past Friday, asking what types of activity we saw with regards to that event. And I'm so glad they brought it up, because when you go back and look at the data for, in this example, the PAC token, which was part of that token weighted airdrop, the snapshot took place on February 10th at 11 a.m. And we can see here that folks actually borrowed a significant amount of PAC tokens to be able to participate in that token weighted airdrop. And then right after 11, folks, repaid their loans, and it went back down. But just thought it was an interesting tidbit of watching how, when you bring new protocols, new functionality online, you start to expand the capabilities of users and the ecosystem to capitalize on some of these events. And in this case, token weighted airdrops was something that folks used the Bonzo protocol for. And I just thought it was very cool.
It's cool to watch, and I still believe in HBAR weighted airdrops. I think it should be driven and made more normalized at the foundation level and the Hashgraph Association level. If you're going to have a token, do a 1%, however you want, HBAR weighted airdrop, drive some of the value back to those HBAR holders. And just because it's the most strategic asset in our space, I think it makes a lot of sense. Brady, is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
Nothing else at this time. No, excited again for the Bonzo TGE event coming up. Excited for all these changes with HBAR Foundation and sort of the updated direction that's being taken, and also HederaCon coming up. So yeah, if you're at HederaCon, definitely come up, say hi. Would love to meet everybody in the ecosystem. It's one of the first times I think that we have this opportunity for like face to face and putting names to faces, or profile pictures to faces. So should be exciting. Yeah.
It's going to be a good time. It seems like we have a lot of good times ahead. Thanks for hopping on, Brady, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Brandon.